Welcome to the Climbing the Charts podcast. I'm Angie Lawless, and I'm here with my co-host, Brandon Miller.
Today on Climbing the Charts, we are honored and very excited to be joined by Ralph Schulz. As most of our listeners will know, Ralph is the president and CEO of the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, a position he was named to by the Chamber's board in November of 2006. Prior to joining the Chamber, Ralph had a distinguished career mostly in the nonprofit sector, spanning management, marketing, and fundraising, and did a little bit of video production too. He just was sharing with us. The Nashville Chamber has roots dating back to 1847 and has been critical in Nashville's evolution as a city. Since taking the helm at the Chamber, Ralph has worked to help navigate the region's recovery from the 2007-2008 recession, which, as most of us know, was followed by an unprecedented boom and growth period. Under Ralph's leadership, the Chamber has, among other things, acted as the lead organization in the creation of the nationally recognized Nashville Entrepreneur Center, which has also been critical to Nashville's increasing stature as one of the leading cities for entrepreneurs in America. Ralph's leadership earned the Nashville Chamber the Chamber of the Year Award in 2009, in part because of the role the Chamber played in the creation of the Nashville for All of Us, which was a campaign made up of community leaders aligned to defeat a 2009 charter referendum, which would have prohibited Nashville city government from conducting business in a language other than English. Had that bill passed, we can't imagine we'd now be seeing companies like Amazon, AllianceBernstein, and Oracle planting major flags here in Music City. Finally, we should also note on a personal level that Ralph is a proud graduate of the University of Tennessee and now resides in Nashville with his wife, Leanne. He has 4 children and 7 grandchildren, and he currently serves, as you might guess, on a number of civic and nonprofit boards. Thank you so much, Ralph. We're super excited to have you here today.
I'm super excited to be here. That was way too long.
He likes the long bio. All right, Ralph, so we're in Music City. What do you listen to?
I listen to a lot of country music, but I listen to all forms of music. Kind of grew up, was part of a band in high school, so like all kinds.
Oh, that's cool. What kind of band were you part of?
We called ourselves the Unknowns, and we remained that way. Yeah. But it was all cover music, mostly Rolling Stones.
Right? That's fun.
Yeah.
Where was that, Ralph? Where did you go to high school?
It was in Chattanooga.
Okay. I grew up in Cleveland, so Cleveland, Tennessee, so not too far away. So I usually say I'm from Chattanooga because nobody's ever heard of Cleveland.
Well, I did have a summer job in Cleveland, Tennessee, building a bank vault. It took most of the summer to do that.
That's
pouring
awesome.
concrete, tie and re-rod. It was hot. It convinced me that I didn't want to be in construction.
That's pretty fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we always have like a connection story. So we're saying one cool anecdote for us was that at last year's Nashionomic events, Jeff Haidt, who heads economic development at the Chamber, he recommended our book, Climbing the Charts, The Ascent of Nashville, as a good recent work about the rise of modern Nashville, especially over the past decade. It was a big room, packed full of realtors and real estate professionals, and helped us gain some new eyes and ears, both for the book and the podcast. So we're, just one little example of what the Chamber does and the fingerprints that it sort of has.
And I met Ralph one day at Fenwick's with Matt Wiltshire.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's good company or not. But.
It is. It's one of the great things about being the CEO of the Chamber is, there's no one in the community that it's not beneficial to be in connection with.
Right.
So
even Matt.
Maybe especially Matt. Yeah. All right.
That's right.
So Ralph, the Chamber has fingerprints that we just kind of talked on most of the business ecosystems in Nashville, from the Music City Center to improvements with public school performance, to being a champion of transit. We talked when we first met this morning about transit meetings, to affordable housing and even things like being involved with the emerging new corridors like Dickerson Pike. In a couple sentences, tell us what the Chamber's mission is and how do you tell people what you do? What's your sort of both personally and as an organization?
Well, that's an easy question to answer briefly. The Chamber exists to create economic prosperity by facilitating community leadership. So in a lot of ways, the Chamber is a process organization. If you look at the last 35 years of Nashville's growth, you'll see a unique partnership between public officials and the business community to invest in Nashville and make it a better place to live, a better place to work, and a place where people can live their whole lives and be happy about being in this place.
Okay. So basically, bringing the governmental side and the private businesses together to make everybody happier, healthier, wiser, richer, all the prosperity things.
Since 1990, every 5 years, there's been a planning process. And then the business community particularly is asked to invest in making those things happen. So this fall, we'll begin the 8th iteration of that 5-year plan. And it will start with research, and we do external research, internal research. All of that will be brought in front of members of the community, both public officials and private business, and a plan will be developed to increase prosperity. To give you an idea of how this has benefited this region, in the 70s and 80s, Nashville's economy was in decline, and business people got together and said, unacceptable. Wall Street Journal wrote an article about how Nashville was being left out of the growth in the South. And it happened that Phil Bredesen was elected mayor at the same time, and he felt the same way. So the chamber was given the task to create the process to develop the plan. And for the first 10 years, the 90s were really consumed with making investments. Frist Center for Visual Arts, the sports teams that were brought to town, et cetera. And then around the year 2000, all of that investment started to pay off. And what's happened, since then, in 34 years, per capita income in this community has gone up almost 300%. 600,000 new jobs are created. Most of those jobs are high wage, high demand jobs. So the plan has worked.
Yeah. And I read also played a key role in like the relocation of these massive companies which have created these jobs like Dell, and Nissan, Amazon.
True, but it's the nature of Nashville that really, we just had to publicize or market the attraction of Nashville. If you go all the way back to the Civil War, you'll see that a large portion of our economy is driven by entrepreneurs. After the Civil War, entrepreneurship really came into its own in Nashville. And then you see the music community, which brands Nashville. I mean, that attracts all kinds of creative, risk-taking people, right? So, there is this force that is Nashville. Our job is to make sure it's a great place to live, that there are people here to do the jobs, well prepared to do the jobs. And then the job creators will come, as Alliance Bernstein and Amazon and Oracle and all those guys have demonstrated.
So before we leave Partnership 2030,
right?
How do companies get involved in that if they want to be part of those conversations in the fall?
Well, at the beginning of planning, we reach out to all businesses in a 10-county area. So you don't even have to be a member of the chamber to be engaged at that point. Then after the research is accumulated and we've gotten the feedback from all of those businesses, then we will gather chamber members and investors in the plan particularly together to say, okay, what are our priorities? What are our goals for the 5 years, and how do we move on from here? So I would tell any business that wants to be involved, the first thing to do is to be a member, and they can find out through our website, NashvilleChamber.com, how to become a member of the chamber.
Okay.
But every business has an opportunity to participate initially.
Okay. And actually, this is another great point while we're talking about it is that, I mean, you guys sat down, we just had a mayoral election, last year. and that's the chamber's a great resource for almost any kind of statistic or data that anybody needs on Nashville or its economy and is available to people, right?
Yeah. Our website is open. Businesses call us for research, answers to research questions. So yeah, it's a big resource to businesses, but we need to know those things again to be able to target those high wage, high demand jobs. We want We want people to be in jobs that sustain their lifestyle in
Right.
Nashville. And this is one of the things I really would stress. A lot of people think we think from the big economy down to the household. We're actually thinking from the household up. We're looking at what's that household income, what are their needs, and what does it take for them to be prosperous? And then we build an economic development plan around that.
Yeah, I think that is a really interesting point because your everyday job to, from the outside looking in does look to be focused on speaking with and talking to businesses. But I think what does get missed a lot is that you're doing it to help the individual, but you're just not necessarily working as closely with the individual. You just get the data and then that feeds your job.
And we create those circumstances. We know, for instance, for the foreseeable future, there are going to be more jobs in Nashville than there are people to fill them. Eventually, that can be detrimental to the economy. So we are interested in the existing population having the skills that match the jobs. And we're also interested in an inflow. When you see birth rates as low as they are at this point in time,
Yep.
we know businesses are going to keep struggling for workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So first, be a great place to live. Second, have that talent development system that allows people to participate in the economy at a high level. And then finally, the job creators will come.
Yeah.
They'll create the
Honestly,
job.
we see that very clearly, like in the real estate sector. Like a lot of developers, the reason they're increasingly looking at cities like Nashville in particular is because the population's growing. Chicago's losing 300 people a day. People are fleeing California left and right. And, Nashville's doing a lot of great things. It's attracting people. And developers know the place you want to build new things, and especially skyscrapers and beautiful condominium projects, is a city that's growing and that has rising income. And I think those are the two keys. And I think we're in a really unique place that has been able to do that and do it really well.
We're a net positive in almost every category, usually in the top 5. Whether you're looking at per capita income, the one place that we have been in the top 5 we'd rather not be is when our housing costs have risen the way they have. But even that now has started to stabilize right at the national average. But yesterday I was talking to an executive who moved here from California, did not move the business initially, just moved themselves. And they said, look, their biggest concern is that Nashville becomes so popular that it loses its character. He said, and that's what you see reflected in the planning that we're starting, is the leadership of this community is becoming concerned with how do we manage this growth. Mayor O'Connell won his campaign on a message of Nashville for Nashvillians first. Doesn't exclude people. It just says we need to be more attentive to what we all love about Nashville and keep that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that includes transplants, because if we continue doing what we all love living here, then that is what they are drawn to. And then they become Nashvillians and we're all part of the same fabric.
Carl Dean used to say the greatest compliment that could be paid to a city is that people want to move there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. In 21 and 22, unemployment 2.7%. So the average household income had increased more than 10% from 21 to 22, with unemployment at 2.7%. So we're seeing that what you're talking about, low unemployment, because there are so many jobs and they're actually really well paid jobs. So that's no problem.
A lot of tech postings.
Yeah.
Go to Indeed.com. There are a lot of tech software positions in Nashville.
There's a
right
tech
now.
vertical emerging in Nashville. Tech's been pretty horizontal to this point in time. But again, when you see Oracle, Amazon, and some of the fintech companies that are locating here, you see Bitcoin Park emerging. there's a vertical.
Nashville just hosted the U.S. Bitcoin convention, which is a pretty big deal, but it's been in Miami. This is the first time it's not been in Miami. It's the biggest one in the world.
Huge deal.
It is like I think Bitcoin Magazine is based here in Nashville.
Did you go?
Yes, I did, and we won it back. I mean,
I did not hear that. That is awesome.
Right? I love the attitude, right? The let's go attitude.
Yeah.
Failure doesn't mean much to those guys. Right. That's a Nashville attitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
Push forward, learn, and push again. So yeah, and Bitcoin Park, I mean, that's a real unheralded gem in this community. I mean, Bitcoin Park brings some of the most brilliant tech talent from around the world here for weeks at a time to resolve and solve issues. Open software, your tech viewership will know this. It is an amazing 2-house campus.
Where is it? I've only read a little bit about this. So I think this is something a lot of people will not know or be familiar with. But I do think Nashville was all over the news in the last 2 weeks because of the Bitcoin convention, right? There's obviously a lot of prominent speakers, but it got international headlines in almost every financial and just mainstream, media source. I mean, part of that was we had a lot of very high profile speakers here. But tell us a little bit about where is Bitcoin Park and what part of town is it in? Is it a physical structure?
It's in Hillsborough Village, and it is 2 houses that used to be owned by Florida Georgia Line. Okay. And you may not ever notice it as you're driving down from 440 toward Hillsborough Village, but it's there off to the right. And the people that are there are just amazingly motivated and smart people.
Wow.
So it's a real
Super
thing.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing, for our book too, we looked at, the Chamber's website was really great for just all kinds of statistics that kind of gets you thinking about how did this happen? How did this happen? What's the story here? One thing about Nashville is we've always had a large hospitality sector. That's been a big part of the economy. Historically, those are not always the highest paying jobs. The economy here has really changed over especially the last 10 years. As I think after Austin, we have been the city that has added the most tech jobs over the last 10 years. So how do you think about, one of the keys obviously is creating rising wages, especially as we're dealing with, housing getting more expensive. How do you think about how do we as a city balance that sort of diversity of, sustaining our hospitality sector, making it a place where the people that work in the sector don't have to drive an hour and a half to go to work, with also trying to create these new jobs that are kind of the information workers at the, kind of the cutting edge, I think, of where the global economy is.
Well, I think
hard question.
Yeah. Well, I think this is something that is a part of Nashville's customs. Okay. Look, when artists come here or songwriters come here, they come here taking the big risk of relocating to be a part of the music scene as a songwriter or artist. Most of the time when they get here, they know they're not going to make it big and not get into that big win right away. So they have to do something else. I think to some extent, Nashville needs those jobs that are those sustainable jobs while people are taking their chances, taking their risks, et cetera. The second thing is we have to have a community that encourages what I would call upskilling. I know that's kind of a technical term, but the nature of jobs are going to change a lot faster in the future than they have changed in the past. And to some extent, people will always need to be learning something new. So as you see things like AI eliminate certain kinds of jobs, AI is going to stimulate new jobs. And we need to have a system, an education system, a business system that helps people acquire those skills to be able to fit those new jobs as well. Hospitality, for people in it as a career or as an owner, they can make great money doing that. But there are lots of jobs in hospitality that are kind of, your ticket into the economy, but you have to make effort to go beyond that. Mm-hmm. we want to support that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think about, we're talking about the kind of timeline, you know, I think I was here in summer of 2000 as a summer associate at Bassbury and Sims. You were already here because you were in law school at Vanderbilt.
I was in law school.
Yeah.
Not yet graduated. Younger.
And I remember I clerked in Charlotte, Atlanta, and Nashville, and actually Chattanooga as well at Miller and Martin there. And I remember thinking, I thought for sure I was going to go to Atlanta or Charlotte. That was just kind of what I thought in law school. And then when I, was here in the summer of 2000, there were a lot of things starting to happen. I think a lot of the people we were clerking with at the law firm thought, Nashville's really got some interesting things starting to happen. And it just had a feeling that there was on the cusp of something kind of new. And I think that's really what we saw happen. I mean, it's been amazing to see it kind of play out. And, it kind of speaking to kind of what you're talking about, Ralph, there's a lot of, it's like sort of those intangible things. But, I was thinking about in 2000, like hospitality sector, the best places to eat were like O'Charlie's and Shoney's. And now Nashville is literally an international food destination. We've got all these James Beard winning chefs. We've got, Locust just won best new restaurant in America in food and wine last year.
Now I have to drive really far to get the O'Charlie's rolls.
But it's amazing to see how that has happened. We've got all these breweries and distilleries and cocktail culture. So those are aspects of the hospitality industry that do have potential high paying jobs, right? You can open up an amazing restaurant. You're now the restaurateur. Those opportunities didn't seem to be there, 25 years ago because we didn't have I don't know if it was the tourism or the taste or,
Well,
what is your take on that?
I think Nashville, again, if you look at its history and its economic history, I think since the end of the Civil War, Nashville's always had the potential. You saw waves of migration into the area. You saw shifts in dominant economic sectors. There was a time when Nashville was only about distribution centers after the Civil War. Then it was about finance. Then it was about merchandising. Then it was about
service merchandise was headquartered here, which is a big, yeah.
But I think in the 70s and 80s, Nashville just kind of went to sleep on its potential. From the 90s on, Nashville has capitalized on its potential and its opportunity. So Nashville's seen as an opportunity place. Again, I stress when nearly a quarter of your economy is based on entrepreneurship, and one of your brand industry is music, where the artists and the songwriters, everybody in that business taking big risks every day. And sometimes you win big, sometimes you don't. That creates a sort of a snap, crackle, and pop in this community that people are drawn to. And
you're right. The entrepreneurial community and the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, which you guys have, it is a powerful, fun place. Yeah. I mean, to be part of that energy.
And with Sam Davison running
it.
He's a successful entrepreneur. And he's fabulous.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just the guy you want there.
Yeah,
right?
We've had Sam on the show, so if everybody wants to go back and listen to past episodes, he was great, kind of talking about his mission, at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center.
Well, so Ralph, just to get to know you a little bit, why do you've been in this job for? Funny, Brandon and I started Wagon Wheel in November of 2006, and you came to the chamber as its CEO then. What do you think it is about you that has been right for this job? Like your personality? Well,
you'd have to ask somebody else about how I've been right for the job. I could tell you why I feel Nashville this is the job that I wanted. When I first came to Nashville, I was working with a small business organization, NFIB, and then left NFIB and went to work on the Adventure Science Center because I had kids, education. The Science Center at the time was a bit of a turnaround, but there were really committed people that wanted to turn it around. And in that process, I became engaged in the community and ended up with the chamber. I remember Leanne and I were talking at one point, and I had a job offer in Washington, D.C., and she said to me, "Look, you can work wherever you want, but I'm staying here." And so,
like that helped decide it.
yeah. So then the Science Center and the Chamber, the Chamber is just such a facilitator of a lot of different team members in this community. I've lived in 11 cities, 8 states, from New York to Dallas to Denver and all over. I've never seen a city where people are as generous with their time that they want to be at the table doing work. They're not just handing a check over and saying, "Get this done." They're at the table, they're figuring it out, and they're helping drive it forward. So, I love that. So if I'm a match for that atmosphere, then that makes me a great person for this job. But I really feel like Nashville, it has that asset already. I'm just proud to be able to be a part of it.
If you had to tell somebody who did not know you on, not necessarily related to the Chamber, to sum up Ralph in 2 to 3 sentences, how would you describe yourself?
Short? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, what do you like to do in your spare time?
Grandkids. If there's not grandkids, I like to play golf, like to read. I was telling Danny Herron over at the Habitat for Humanity that when I ever decided to end this job, I wanted to go to work for Habitat as a volunteer doing framing. But then
I thought you got out of construction with the bank vault.
I like framing. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. My dad and I built a lot of bedrooms and bathrooms, right, when we moved into houses. But then Danny told me, "Well, we pretty much prefab that framing now." So, so I got to figure something else.
You're out of a retirement gig. What do you, when you go home at night, what do you do?
First of all, I'm often getting home pretty late at night. It's just the nature of the job.
A lot of like city events that you're going to, or are you in the office working?
No, a lot of city events, a lot of connections, a lot of things are planned at that time. But when I get home, usually it's pretty much catching up on the news. It's getting up online and checking out the Journal, checking out the Tennessean, the NBJ, and then maybe digging deeper into a few things. Yeah. I just like the work. I feel fortunate to be matched up with this work. Yeah,
I like that.
He was saying before he came here, he was at another event. So what does your day look like on just a typical day? What is a typical day in the life of?
There isn't a typical day. It's part of living the dream, right? That for me, that's the attraction. Every day is a gear shift day. You may be working on transit, you may be working on education, you may be working on economic development, you might be at the legislature, you might be, a lot of different places.
Let's talk about that. We love talking about the legislature. How's it going down there?
Well, there is a perspective at the legislature. There are perspectives at all government bodies. And the way you look at it is, I think Metro Council is reflective of the community's values. State legislature is reflective of state values. But they need to have people like us, and I don't mean just the chamber, I mean us as individuals, connecting with them. Mm-hmm. So often they don't get to connect with citizens. Right. And I spend a lot of time telling business people, we can represent you at the legislature, but nothing substitutes for you meeting your legislator.
Right.
Nothing. So, it's always a contentious place because you have differences of perspective and opinion.
Of a lot of, I think more than red, blue, a lot of just city, country perspectives.
Yeah, Tennessee's a blend, right? Yeah. We were looking yesterday, Jeff Haidt and I were talking, and Jeff made me aware of the fact that Tennessee was the first state in the South to reach 1 million in population. Now, can you guess what year that was?
1886.
Not bad, but 1850 is the answer.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So So, there's a blend of people that have in-migrated to the area since that time. So,
And so, talking about, I know when you and I last spoke, you said that you're the busiest that you've been in a very long time, reflective of the current administration. I think being open to the chamber, talking with the chamber. Tell us a little bit about that and how that sort of compares to just other, not necessarily the last administration, but just in your history of administrations, how your job kind of.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we're a regional chamber. So there are 41 mayors out there in this region that we're in contact with and working with, and various members of the team, TVA, the state, et cetera. But we're particularly focused in the Nashville metro area. Every member every mayor has a different style. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of need to adjust to that style. I think it's important for mayors to realize that we're a membership association. We represent our members as an independent body, but we want to be collaborative. So some mayors have different collaborative styles than others, and some are actually more collaborative than others. I think it's been nice with Mayor O'Connell to find him in a very collaborative mode. He believes it's going to take a team to keep Nashville strong, positive, and healthy. And so we naturally gravitate toward a lot of activity with mayors like that. There are other mayors that operate a little more singularly, a little more solo, and we will find our ways to be supportive with them too, but it's usually not quite as active.
So what's an example of something that Mayor O'Connell has you working, sort of in a collaborative nature on right now?
Transit.
Yeah.
There are things that we are well positioned to do in support of the mayor, depending on the topic. And so we'll raise our hand and volunteer, and then he'll say, that's what I need you to do. But it might be transit. It might be education in some form. It might be, you name the topic. It might be some policy issue at the state level that can help Nashville position itself better.
So you're pro-transit.
But economic development too.
Yeah.
So is this referendum in November, is it gonna pass?
Well, we will know on November 6th.
Happy birthday to me.
I will tell you that there is a favorable disposition by many people in the electorate to pass it, but every referendum has risks attached to it. And creating awareness, understanding, and acceptance, and even support, it's going to have to continue for the next 3 months.
How does this feel? We've had Michael Briggs on and talk about, the transit plan. It was great.
Well, of course you have.
Yeah.
But sort of, having been in your position, how does it feel different from, a lot of cities sort of in Nashville's size, it's usually taken 2 or 3 big efforts before they have been able to pass a significant transit plan like we are trying to pass now. Having been involved with the last one, which was unsuccessful, I think that was in 2018. How does this feel different? What has it been like in your chair, seeing that effort versus seeing this effort? And what do you think is going to be different? That effort failed, basically 66% against, a third for. It feels like this is going to pass, but again, we don't know.
Well, first and foremost, there was a failure of trust in that last election. In that last referendum, you had many more people that then voted yes, that were actually in favor of a solution and the solution. But if you remember the tumult of the time, trust was lost, and you're going to lose any referendum where doubt can be created. Mm-hmm. The hard part about these referendums is the people who are for something have to educate the electorate The people who are against something, all they have to do is create doubt.
Oh, we saw that. That was, it's like the explanations that had to go into how are we spending this money? All that was so complex.
It's like it takes 5 minutes to say this is how it's going to be. It takes 10 seconds to find an attack line.
To say that's a lot of money.
And the big loss of trust there was, by the end of that referendum, nobody knew who would be in charge of fulfilling. So
now we did speak with former Mayor Barry, and she said, "Look, I'll take some of that fault. I completely accept it, but we didn't lose with a small margin. We lost by a massive margin. So I don't think all of that is accredited to the tumultuousness."
Yeah, and part of that was obviously we had a lot of big national organizations that got involved with that referendum to try to defeat it.
But see, some of that reporting, I think, is a little bit off base. We were aware of where the opposition support was coming from. Actually, there wasn't a whole lot of outside money coming in. The one big resource that came in from the outside was voter identification, voter data. That was a non-cash thing. But I would tell you that in January of that year, we were up in the polls positive, and very soon fell off the shelf.
Yeah.
And when we did an after action report, we did polling and focus groups, we found that people just didn't trust where it was going to go from there. Mm-hmm. So look, you can always run a campaign better. And honestly, we felt in that after action report, there were things we should have done differently.
And are those things happening now from your perspective?
But that's what I was going to come to. Trust exists now. Mm-hmm. Two big differences. Trust, people have faith and trust, willing to give the mayor the chance. And then secondly, the plan, as I heard someone connected to the campaign say the other day, there's something in this plan for everybody to like. And in the last plan, there was always something for somebody to dislike. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I feel more optimistic about this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I'm very excited for it. I mean, I tend to look at it like it will help those who need it the most, and then we can sort of build on top of that. I have heard some of my friends echo, yeah, but how is this going to help me? And I think, explaining the signals, how
you're
they're
not going to be sitting at a traffic light with nobody coming in any direction for 60 seconds.
And we know that if we don't pass this, nothing will happen. Right. We've proven that in the last 6 years. And really, Phil Bredesen made the first attempt in 1997. And, look, I have to tell you, just since 2018, the amount of money the federal government will put into projects like this has dropped by a third. Some of the places you would have put transit from 2018 on have now been developed.
Right.
So we're just making the solution more difficult over time. Mm-hmm. And we did a study of 25 cities. And I tell you, if we don't pass this referendum, it is likely that we won't get another chance for 10 years. And think about where Nashville will be at that point.
10 years,
yeah. So, Ralph, when you look back on, almost 2 decades now, is there something that stands out that you are particularly proud of that, has happened while you've been in office, and then also a place where you think, man, I really wish we could have done that better?
There's no one thing I'm most proud of. What I'm most proud of is that this engagement of community leadership has been sustained. Uh-huh. It continues. There are so many events along the way that get the headlines, but there are so many little things along the way that were indispensable to getting to the headlines. I was talking with Randy Rayburn not long ago, who I think was just a huge treasure for the community. And one of the things we were talking about was when we were engaged in the convention center development over 8 years, people don't realize that was an 8-year process. At any given time, the 30 people sitting around the table at our weekly Friday meetings, someone was taking the lead that hadn't taken the lead the week before. That's what I'm proud. I'm proud of that for Nashville.
Yeah. That makes
So, but Convention Center was a big accomplishment. I mean, look at what it's unleashed.
And that's an amazing story, just kind of for people who may not be familiar with that story. The Convention Center was sort of kind of hit go during the depths of the recession. And it was an incredible project that came in under budget, which almost no project of that scale.
And on time.
Almost no project of that scale and that sort of timeline does that. So we'll see if Titan Stadium can do it. I think it's got a good chance, but we
because
shall
to
see.
that same tone of Nashville and risk taking, Mayor Dean was a risk taker and
calculated risk taker.
A calculated risk taker. That's right. When you meet former Mayor Dean, you don't necessarily think risk taker. So I think you're right. Very calculated risk taker.
Yeah, I think he had the attitude because we were talking to him during the election process. And then literally the day he got elected, he took the first step to fulfilling that thing. But I think the feeling we walked away with was that he felt like the risk of not doing that was greater than the risk of doing it.
Makes sense.
And so it paid off.
Yeah.
He didn't project the economic decline that really made it stand out.
Yeah.
But man, oh man, he picked the right time.
He's like, but it looks good now.
Yeah. I was thinking, talking about political leadership a little bit. I know there's a recent Vanderbilt study that was talking about, is Nashville on the right track or, on the wrong track? And we've seen a pretty big uptick in people saying it's on the right track.
Right.
And that's a real testament, I do think, to Mayor O'Connell's leadership. And I think you're seeing a shift that, for a while there, I think a lot of people felt like the city was not on track. And I think that's a big piece. I mean, these are the intangibles and the X factors that may also play a critical role in how this transit built.
It's like what Burt Matthews told us when we were writing the book, many years ago. He says, Nashville has had we've consistently made the right leadership decisions for the time. And then we had a little up and down there for a few years, but it feels like we've righted this ship and that we're
feels stable.
Yeah. Well, I first of all, I do think that the mayor's tone is immensely important for everyone's tone. I think that this mayor's collaborative spirit, Nashville is naturally a friendly, happy, collaborative place. And when it is in a circumstance where there is a challenge that's being unmet, people get unhappy, the collaboration gets diminished, and finally it gets so intolerable that they decide to do something about it. And I believe that's what the mayor does. The mayor is the top of the pyramid and sets that tone. So yeah, we've seen that big shift.
Is there something that that you're working on with the chamber that you think that a lot of Nashvillians may not be keyed into, that they may not be aware of?
I think the biggest thing, it's complex. It's really about preparing people for the jobs that are coming, right? But that means you got to be working on affordable housing, what we call income-aligned housing. You have to be working on transportation because that connects the opportunities. You have to be working on education. All of those things, they're meat and potatoes. They're foundational. They're not flashy. They're not like fireworks on the 4th of July or a big music bash on New Year's Eve.
But they are massive things
But they
to
are,
tackle.
that's the foundation of your community, right? So those are the things that people don't realize are happening, but they are happening.
Yeah.
We usually split these up a little bit. These are you'll like that. These are fun.
What's my time limit?
You're
How many words?
You're concise. You're concise.
You're good. Okay. The name of a book that every person should read.
The American Nation. And it's a book about the cultures of North America and the cultural zones and their long history and what's brought them here. So The American Nation. It's 800 pages. It's a little bit more like a textbook, but it's really
worth it.
insightful.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, assume your job no longer exists and you need to assume another role in government or working closely with Nashville's government. What would it be?
It would be something having to do with education. I mean, again, foundation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Young people need to be ready to follow their future when they leave
Through
school.
education, we can solve almost everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Do you play it safe or are you a thrill seeker?
I wouldn't say a thrill seeker, but I like, put the stake out there far.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
So I say, let's go skydiving today. You say I've already been, or yes, or
Well, I did
let
a
me think.
tandem jump.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, I'd be willing to do that
Okay.
with proper training.
That's awesome. What is the coolest thing that you have done as part of your job in Nashville?
Like a back room, behind the scenes, fun kind of thing.
Oh gosh.
I'm guessing you get to meet a lot of people in your role.
Hey, Jelly Roll was at the groundbreaking this morning.
Yeah. Ah, all right.
Yeah.
You know, I've just had so many cool moments. Hard to single one out. The coolest thing was when we hosted George Bush's last town hall, and Daryl Freeman introduced the president in the presence of his two sons.
Oh, wow.
And to see his sons' faces, and to see George Bush and Daryl Freeman kibitzing with each other a little bit on the stage, it was just like, wow, this is so cool. Even now, it's giving me goosebumps. Yeah.
It's kind of like what Nashville does. It brings us together.
Daryl, when the president came out on the stage, Daryl said, "Now, Mr. President, Nashville's become a popular place for corporate headquarters, and I'd really encourage you to think about making Nashville your headquarters." And President Bush sort of, chucked, and he said, "Daryl, I don't think you want the national headquarters for the government in Nashville." And it's just a great moment.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So from a personal perspective, what makes you nervous?
What makes me nervous is supermajorities on anything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good time.
Anywhere, anytime, anyhow.
Right. Any side. I agree.
Yeah.
Who should we do this with next? You're almost off the hot seat.
Wow. I really think, have you done it with Stuart McWhirter?
Mm-hmm.
I think Stuart has a real eye on the future. I also think one of the two founders of Bitcoin Park.
Okay. Tell our listeners the best way to get involved with the chamber, to learn more about it, membership.
The easiest, fastest way is to go online to NashvilleChamber.com, and our website can help connect you to us. You can call us, but that NashvilleChamber.com will connect you very quickly with a person who can say, here's what the opportunities are.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you coming on today, Ralph. This was amazing. And just in this Nashville way, we just asked. He said yes. And one of the busiest men in Nashville is sitting here giving his time to all of us. So thank you.
May I close with one thing that we
Please.
often tell to people that are moving here? Nashville is a place where everybody will answer your phone call the first time. Whether you get a second call is up to you.
Yeah.
But you're going to connect when you ask people to connect.
We share that story a lot, and we credit Matt Wiltshire with it, actually, because we heard it first from him. He said when he was in the mayor's office, he would tell companies, you can get the first meeting. So set your culture that way. You take the first meeting. Mm-hmm. You may not get the second. You don't have to take the second, but we take the first meeting.
Yeah,
So
I think he dubbed that the Nashville way. I'm sure he was borrowing that from somebody else, but honestly, it was a huge theme of our book. I mean, it really was. Like almost any person we asked to talk to said yes. Like, it doesn't matter who they were.
Through.
I mean, Bill Frist helped edit the healthcare chapter.
It's funny because you don't know where it started. Nelson Andrews, who's passed now. Nelson was the first one I heard say, anybody in town will take your call. The interesting thing about what Nelson said to me was, do you know the order to make those phone calls in? And that was a time in Nashville where the order made a difference.
Mhm.
I'm not as sure anymore that the order makes as big a difference.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But anyway.
Well, we appreciate it, Ralph. Thank you
That was
so
awesome.
much.
No,
This is
thank
great.
you guys. This was fun.